All righty. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Crown Council Live. I'm Stuart Anderson, joined by Greg Anderson. Hey, Greg.
Hello.
Hey, this is our weekly program where we connect with our community, teams from across the country. We encourage you to join us live and hear from some of the things that are happening around the country, where we try to connect everybody to our resource partners, our doctors, our team members, live events, humanitarian trips, Eagle U, all those things that are constantly happening throughout the Crown Council. This is the show where we try to bring that to you. So if you can join us live or join us recorded, either way works. We're grateful for everybody that we've gotten over the last week to participate with us. There's a few recordings that we're going to play today, as well as a live guest. So
Wait. It's
grateful to
August
be together.
1st. It's August
It's
1st.
August 1st. Yeah, really grateful for the summer. Man, it seems to be going fast, but
Oh man, time
we
flies.
here at the Crown Council, our schedule kind of stays the same year to year with the Smiles for Life program, and then humanitarian trips, and then planning for the annual event, and then participating in the annual event, and then it's kind of the same schedule year after year, and it's amazing to watch how fast each item kind of. I can't believe we're already done with Smiles for Life 2024. So
Yep, money day
it's
to day. Last day to get the money in.
unbelievable. We're going to take care of those housekeeping items after we meet with Tanya. So let's bring Tanya. We'll bring Tanya Bailey in, and then we'll do some housekeeping items after that, because I know she's in the waiting room, kind of waiting for us. And so let's bring Tanya. I hope she's ready. We're a little early bringing her in, but that's okay. As Tanya comes in, I'm going to share my screen. Oh, hold on. I got to get my screen share.
Oh,
Hey, how's it
Hi.
going? Hi.
So good.
Ta-da! I know we brought you in
Ta-da!
just like a tiny bit early, but I said I don't want to make them wait if they're in the waiting room. So
Hey, I heard when you're early, you're on time. So we were early.
We are before I was just going to introduce you with my screen. There is this great website called totalpatientservice.com where it says, "Who's your team's coach?" And there was some really fun thing here. Consultant versus coach, there's a big difference. Tanya, before you introduce where you are and what you're doing, can you talk about just real quick, what is a TOPS coach and what you do?
I love that.
Okay.
So I love the idea of coaching because every great team has a great coach. And when you think about athletes and you think about sports teams, you always think about those people that were very influential in helping guide them to success. And the guiding to success to me is all about helping people discover within them how they can be more successful. So what we do at Total Patient Service and coaching is help teams discover, and their doctors, but help them discover what they have within to be their very, very best. And everybody loves coaches. I haven't met a lot of people that like consultants all that much. So
For an NBA championship team, they had a great consultant for the
right, exactly. And that sounds very analytical and deductive. And so at Total Patient Service, we believe, because people mean everything is so important. So coaching is all about people and elevating teams and doctors, and ultimately that allows them to elevate their patients.
Nice.
So
Well, and each week the TOPS coaches are out and about meeting with different teams, working one-on-one. And Tanya is in one of those practices today. So I'll let you and Christy introduce who you're with today.
So my co-coach here, Christy, and I are tag teaming today. Is Christy Larson, one of our amazing coaches at Total Patient Service, with the amazing team of Smiles for Life. Isn't that a fantastic name?
What a great
what
name.
a great name.
Powerful.
Yes, in Bridgewater, Virginia. They actually have 2 locations, another location in Stanton. This is Dr. Dan Whiting. I'm sure a lot of people recognize
Dr. Whiting, greetings.
Becky McIntyre is back
Hi,
here.
Becky.
I'm going to scroll my computer. We have Tara, and
Hi,
then
Tara.
trying to hide over here, we have
Whoa.
Dr.
Look, it's the boss.
Also.
Nice.
So Christy and I have been here this week. We spent a day in their Stanton location yesterday. We're working in this location today, and we'll have all the teams together here in their training facility tomorrow. So that's
Very
what we're
cool.
doing.
Nice. Maybe can we just get a whoever you want to pick Tanya, to give us a bit of a background, a big picture of what this practice is like, a number of team members, and maybe some history behind where we are.
You gotta get that to Dr. Mack.
Okay.
I was coming to you, Dr. Whiting.
Well, he's the
He's
He's-
the history.
He is the history. You gonna do
Let's
that,
hear
Dr. McIntyre?
Go for it.
Or are you gonna delegate?
Many of you know, I've been in practice for about 42 years and, how long have we been with Crown Council and TOPS now?
I started coming to your practice in 2018.
2017 is when we first.
Met
Went
in
out
Las
to
Vegas.
Vegas, yeah.
No
So
more
we
hiking.
really enjoyed our time with TOPS and Crown Council because patients are where it's at. We've always felt like our patients were important, but we also know our team's important. So you just have to train the team to help the patients and help the patients get what they need and want. Sometimes you have to teach them what they need and make it so they want what they need, but
So true.
you know, it just takes work, and so that's what we've been learning and continue to learn. Crown
Very good.
Council.
So
I'm sort of in the retirement. I got 8 more days to work, so this is the
What?
future here. So we're doing a little transition coming up.
yep.
Very good.
What's gonna happen on day 9?
Yeah.
He's coming
Somehow
to
I don't see
Utah.
us sleeping in. I just don't
He'll-
see
he'll
it.
show up here.
He'll show up here.
So true.
That's
I'll
fun.
be coming in and out, but mostly just consults. and
Mostly out.
doing all my other things. Got a
Good
list.
for you. Good for you.
Maybe Becky, can you answer this question? When you are looking at all the other practices around where you are, what is it that makes your culture, your team stand out? Why do patients choose your practice?
So I do a lot of the new patient consults, so it's kind of the first experience that they have in the office. And what I consistently hear is that they have been to this office or that office. And usually when I'm talking to them, we do comprehensive care, and often we're talking about full arch implant work. But what I hear is that they went here and they spent 10 minutes with it, and it was just all about the money and pay now, and there wasn't any relationship involved with it. We spend really what it takes to talk to them. A lot of patients with anxiety just need to know that they can feel comfortable where they are. I had a gentleman that came in clutching the, chairs, hands. And by the time he left, he says, my heart rate's down. I mean, he was like totally chill by the time he left. And so really focusing in on building that relationship and continuing it. Our reviews always talk about, how nice everyone is and how comfortable they feel here. We call our patients our dental family, and we want them to feel like they are an important member of our family. And so I think the relationship part of it is, we do excellent dentistry, but the reality is patients, for the most part, don't know the difference between good dentistry and excellent dentistry. But they do know the difference in how they feel about how they're treated. And so that, I think, is our strongest point.
Nice.
And
Dr.
these
Whiting?
guys are champions at doing good. They have the best heart. Good people.
Yes.
Good
very.
people like doing business with good people.
Tanya, can you talk a little bit about what you guys are working on today? Just a little bit about what your schedule looks like, it's like a GoPro. I like that. What are you guys doing? What are you guys working on? What are you training?
Such a great question. So, you asked about coaching to start with, and I think when you think about the most successful teams, they constantly go back to the basics and execute the basics the best. And so a lot of what we've been working on, Tara over here, Tara,
Mhm.
and I and the front team this morning, we're really working on the flow of the entry of the patient to include the relationship links, and then how to do a great emotional interview and link that to the doctors, so the doctors are set up for success. and then finish it out with financial arrangements. So while I was working on that in the front, you mentioned how many people, this is a large practice. They have 2 locations, they have 4 doctors, and then a lot of other people. I think it's 30 some people. So Christy was working in the back. They have 2 new dental assistants. And so Christy was coaching side by side with 2 of the new dental assistants, getting them ready to execute a great relationship linked to the doctor. So we're really, we're 6 or 7 years into this, and we come back and we work on the basics so they can execute at the highest service level to do exactly what Becky was saying, which is make it about patients and relationships, not just about treatment and financial arrangements.
Nice. Very cool.
So you're saying that if you teach them one time, that's not enough?
Gosh, it is
It only
not. No. Dr. Whiting, I've been trying to, train him. No, for all of us, repetition creates mastery, right? So what are
Amen.
they, 10,000 hours to attain mastery level? So we're at it and working through it over and over, and just continuing to add to. And I think this fits right here. One of the things I did want to do is just show you some of the things that they do have.
Ooh,
They have their
yes.
service
Pull back the
back.
curtain. Pull back the curtain.
Yeah. Recognize those guys? There's some
Eagles.
Look
eagles.
at those cute eagles.
There's some qualified membership plaques
yeah.
over there.
The bookcase
Um,
that
there-
Steve always talks
Oh,
about.
the bookcase. I mean, there's so much evidence of their, not only, one of the things that I love about this practice is they don't just train when we come quarterly, it's ongoing. Their teams have their training binders, and so they're at it. This group pours into their team like no other out there. So
Awesome.
it's always
It
ongoing.
shows. Yeah. Dr. Whiting, with the rest of the Crown Council membership watching you on this little program, what
pressure.
no
Don't be
pressure.
nervous. Don't be nervous.
What would you, maybe in the last year, let's say last year, have you learned that would be worth sharing or teaching other teams that you've learned, or that you're doing that's brought success, or that you're like, oh man, we can't practice without this, that you could share with the other Crown Council members?
Yeah, I'm gonna say something I think a lot of people would already recognize, but this isn't a one-person show, right? There's so many people that we rely on, and I just can't do it by myself. And with Tara here, one thing that I like doing is, maybe once a week, I'd like to do it more often, but just having a sit down meeting with her. She's our office manager, and she really has a good pulse on our practice. And I just really enjoy working with my team. And I view them more than just a team. I actually view them as friends. Maybe that's not the right way to be, but really is nice spending a day with your friends instead of, just other employees. And
You spend more time with us than you do your family. Almost.
this
You
is
do.
very true.
We're going to send that to your wife, Dan.
Very true.
Oh,
Going to London.
she already knows. She
She
spends
already
so
knows. Yeah.
Yeah. I would just say, really relying on each other, leaning on each other. And that's just something I've really have been doing, I would say more than a year, but I'm always trying to grow, and I learn so many things from other people. It's not just me.
Nice. Very cool.
Very nice.
I want to just
Joe?
tack one thing that's been important for me. When you come to work, there are so many things you could be doing. You could be looking at x-rays, you can be looking at the report of findings you're going to give, but when you pierce the building, I have found it very valuable to find the people who are here and just go and say, good morning. Look at their eyes and say it, because once the patients are here, you don't have that opportunity. You have one shot at it. And I have found it to be very helpful for me. And I think they appreciate it too, because You know, your time is taken up the rest of the day. So you got that one shot just to let them know good morning.
Hmm.
And you don't have to overdo it. Be real about it. And they know when you're being real. So
Great advice. Nice. Tara, looking at a two-part question, what have you learned about what makes a great team member? And then also, can you talk to the doctors of the Crown Council, advice for what makes a great doctor or a great thing that doctors can do to create a better culture for their practice?
Yeah, so to answer the first part there, what makes a great team member? We talk so much with Tanya and Tops about being a 10 and the positivity, focusing on those wins, working together as a team and really doing the teamwork and making it happen. That is what we love in being a team member. When you start your day on a positive note, the rest of your day is going to run smoothly.
Nice.
And then the second part was
What makes a great doctor?
Yeah. Any advice to the doctors from your perspective?
yeah, so
Listen up.
these two guys here, I mean, they really care about our team. I can't say enough about them. When, just like going back to Dr. McIntyre, he does say good morning to every team member. And when he's not here to say that good morning, our team members are asking, wondering where Dr. McIntyre is. So you know that it means a lot to them. They ask about our family. They care. They want to spend time with us. Because like I said, they're with us more than they are their own family. So just knowing that we feel heard and that we're cared about.
Awesome.
Well
Great.
done.
Very good. All right, Tanya,
Yes.
or Christy, either of you can answer this question. When you're looking at what this practice does well, they've already kind of answered this question. What do you guys see? What separates this practice from other practices?
Yeah, they really, what they're saying as far as how they're taking care of the total patient. They really, really do. Like, you can see it, you can feel it. And it's, from the leadership down as how they care for each other. It's how they care for their patients. And I would say that's something that's really elevated in this
Nice.
practice.
Becky, maybe Greg alluded to the fact that you guys do a lot of good. Can you just talk a little bit about that story, about how you guys are involved in humanitarian work and doing good outside your practice?
Oh, that's my favorite story. So
It could take a while because there's a lot.
I opened it up. Let's do
There's
it.
I gotta go to work.
She'll be quick.
we had the opportunity back in 2016 to learn about an orphanage just outside of Cap Haitian. So that's the north side of the island that Haiti is on. We were flying to Miami and happened to sit next to one of the founders of this orphanage. And so 2 months later, we went down to check them out. And absolutely fell in love with this particular nonprofit because they're doing it right. They truly care about the kids, about their education, about their futures. They have mamas and papas to care for them. Everything was just done so well. And over the years, they've added on, they're building a high school right now so that the kids can continue their education. They've built a community church, so the whole community is becoming more involved. But we had the opportunity to start a dental clinic there. And each time we would go, we'd take a few more suitcases of stuff. and we now have a 3-chair clinic down there that has a Pano machine, digital x-rays, autoclaves, Statum, it's just pretty much anything you can do here, you can do there. Our biggest frustration has been that we were only going twice a year. So 2 weeks out of 52, there was a provider there to care for these people. And the rest of the year it sat there empty. So our goal has always been to find a Haitian dentist that would work there full time. Of course, COVID, and then there's been a lot of political unrest in Haiti over the past 4 years. So from 2020 until last fall, we were not able to go. But last fall, we had the opportunity to go, and it was really motivated and spearheaded by Dr. Whiting's son, Nate, who took a an opportunity, this is where I get emotional. Nate loves to run and he loves to run long distances. And so 2 years ago, well, a year ago, I guess,
Yeah.
his goal was to run 100 miles in 24 hours, but he wanted it to benefit. So he asked if he could do a pledge page for the Orphanage Dental Clinic. And his goal was to raise $10,000. Well, we hit the $10,000 the day of the run and money kept coming in,
Nice.
raised it to 15,000. And so he made it to 15,000. So then as he looked forward to this year, he decided to double the distance that he was going to run. So his goal was 200 miles in 72 hours. He ended up doing
Wow.
202 miles.
202.
And he doubled his goal to
Oh.
30,000. And he was actually able to raise 33,000. So between those two events, he has now contributed $48,000 to the dental clinic, which is enough
Wow.
to keep the dentist paid, the staff paid, equipment, I mean, the supplies, for about 2 years. We need about $2,000 to $2,500 a month to keep the clinic open down there. We were able to, when we were there last November, we were able to have Dr. Cliff there for the week to kind of give him a working interview. We loved him. He was great. He was good with the patients. He's a native of Haiti. But again, because of political unrest, he wasn't able to actually move until May. And so on August 12th, so in about a week and a half, they have their official grand opening of a full-time dental clinic, which will serve that whole community. So we're very excited that we have accomplished that goal.
Amazing.
Very cool.
And now Nate's figuring out what his next,
300 miles.
Ah!
Well, he
And
just
good
ran-
job raising a good kid. That's awesome.
Very cool.
He
Good
just
job.
ran an Ironman last Saturday, so
And
like
he's 16?
less than
No
2
big
months
deal.
after
Wow.
running 202 miles. Yeah,
And how old is he?
16 years old.
Oh, what? Wow.
I vote him to be one of the speakers at the next annual event.
Okay. Very good call. Good call. Oh my
James
God.
Lawrence can get up there.
Right.
Very
Actually,
cool.
James Lawrence is someone that he's been following and has certainly inspired him some.
And that after Crown Council had James
Yeah,
Lawrence. and we-
yeah, we were telling him about him, so he started following us. But
Very,
we've done other humanitarian things too, but that's been the biggest one that we've been involved with.
very cool. Tanya, can you talk for just 1 sec? I know you guys probably need to go, so that's all good. Can we just wrap? Tanya, do you, this is obviously a rhetorical question, but do you think doing good, the way that they do good, how does that change their practice? Is this a thing that matters?
Yeah.
I mean, how does that change a team?
Oh, so, you know, as amazing as what you just heard is, it's really just kind of the tip of the iceberg of actually all the things they do. They do so much here in their community, with their patients, with their team. They currently have someone living with them and they're helping him, you know, be able to come into the United
Haiti.
States from Haiti. And there's hours of stories there. But what I love about it is they've provided an opportunity for their team members who might not otherwise even be aware of these kinds of things to be involved. And they have, I think everybody knows about this at this point, but they also have a whole campaign about earning your seat to the annual event. And a huge part of that is activities that, certainly some activities that support the practice. But part of that is there has to be activities that are doing good for their colleagues and for their community. So their impact is far and wide, probably more than any of us even know. And I think we all can agree that when you're doing good, whether it's here in your practice or in your community or outside of even our country, the return on that is for yourself of how you grow, is, I don't know how you measure that. So that's the impact I think they're having and changing people's lives, even with the opportunity to do those good things. And even just, I mean, Nate's inspirational to all of us. I mean, watching that journey of the running, and you talk to him and he's like, yeah, no big deal. It's just 200 miles.
Uh-huh.
You know, and I'm thinking like, I got to quit complaining about 10,000 steps.
200 miles is like what a normal person does in like a month. Like that's
Right.
like 3
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
For a year, as
Wow.
the case may be.
So pretty cool stuff.
Well, we are big fans of Smiles for Life Dental. We I can't describe how grateful the Crown Council community is as a whole for your leadership and example. Anytime that you guys step up, it's so fun to point the rest of the Crown Council to watch you. So thank you for being leaders and examples. And if more offices were just follow you guys, what an incredible impact it'd have on communities. And we're just grateful. Thank you for spending the time today to just share a little bit. So thanks.
Amen.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks
guys.
for having us, Stuart.
I know we went a little over, Tanya. Thank you, you guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm surprised Dr. Whiting's assistant hasn't been down here hauling him upstairs.
Sorry.
So,
It was worth it. It was worth it.
yeah, yeah.
All
All
right.
right.
Have a great day.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you, everybody. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Man, we could do an hour with them. They are so awesome.
They are great people. Yeah, I know that that Joe's retiring, but I'd keep Becky around, you know.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Hey, I said we were going to have some housekeeping items. So let me just move quickly through this. You are looking at my dashboard on crowncouncil.com. And inside my dashboard, as well as most people in the Crown Council, you will find the 30th annual event hub. So here is where you go when you register for the 30th annual event. This is the hub of all the information that you're going to receive as a Crown Council team or team member going to the event. Over here on the left, you'll see an icon before the event. And me and Greg want to talk for just a minute about recognize your doctor, recognize your team. This is an awesome opportunity for all team members and doctors to recognize each other. This is an incredible part of being at a live event with Crown Council is the opportunity to recognize each other. This is a forum where you can share incredible stories, incredible service, things that you have learned, and we want you to recognize each other. And one of those things is right here is in celebration of our 30th year, we would like to announce our Pearl Awards to recognize outstanding actions of doctors, team members, or entire teams. And this is a great line. All nominees will be recognized. So often our awards program focuses on best doctor to work for, team of the year, team member of the year. But we wanted to open up a bit of an opportunity that if you see any type of action that needs to be recognized, we want to hear about it and we want to recognize it and we want to share with the rest of the Crown Council membership things like a pearl obviously is rare, hard to find, singular, of high value. So in 500 words or less, help us recognize your doctor or team member with a Pearl Award. These awards will recognize someone who has had a significant influence on the success of the practice or a personal success in private life. And from there, we can build the award, help you create it, whether it's pictures or a story or bringing you on stage to do the recognition. We want you to recognize great things that are happening in your practice. So those great things continue to happen by recognizing the things that are happening. So Greg, did I miss anything with our Members' Choice Awards or what teams can do now to prepare for this?
No, and I'll tell you why we're doing this. I mean, we've got 5 months or so till the annual event, maybe 6. And the reason we're talking about this today is we want to give you an opportunity to think about who you are associated with that you can tell a story about. I mean, we just heard one.
That's right.
We just heard one. What a great opportunity there to recognize that practice who encouraged Dan's son, Nate. I mean, what they didn't say was all the encouragement and money that came out of the practice to encourage Nate to do what he did.
Yeah.
And that alone is a great Pearl experience. And if you just spend a minute and watch for those kind of things that happen and write them down and tell us that story, give us an opportunity to recognize you and your team and members of your team for specific opportunities they have taken during the year that they may not have ordinarily been recognized for, or maybe don't want to be recognized for, but we do it anyway.
Well, and we have a lot of great stories of doctors in the Crown Council who they use the annual event as an opportunity to recognize team members, because there's not a lot of places in dentistry where you can put a team member on the stage, receive an award, come home with that award, tell the story, post the video, put it on social media, where you recognize the behavior of a team or the behavior of a practice member, who you say, hey, this is behavior that we want to continue. This is behavior and things that you are doing that will make our team great. So let's recognize it. So highly
That's a very
encourage you.
important principle. People repeat what you reward. If
Yes.
you want them to repeat it, reward them. Excellent.
All right. Perfect timing here. I am going to navigate real quick. Let's see if I can open this up. So sorry, I should have had my screen still shared.
I expect a flood of Pearl Awards before the end of business today.
Yeah. So in my directory, everybody has this on mycrowncouncil.com. Same place in my directory, you will find the resource partners. And we are going to meet with and talk to Jeremy Brown from Watson Brown. And he is going to share he's going to answer 4 questions about what he does. So as you can see here, Watson Brown's part of Practice Sales and Appraisals. It's a dental practice transition firm that specializes in dental practices, appraisals, brokerages, and sales services to dental practitioners at every stage of their professional careers. This is his little page here with contact information, phone number, website. This was a webinar now that's maybe 2 or 3 years old, but we spent 30 minutes together, me and Jeremy, talking about some really cool things that you can do to prepare your practice, either to enter a practice or sell your practice, and some questions about each of those experiences. So let me make sure I share my sound. All right, and I'll play this little video, and that'll be us. Okay, here we go. Ready? All right, everybody. Welcome to the Crown Council live stream. Stuart here, joined by Jeremy Brown. Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, Stuart. How you doing?
Very good. This is the first time I've had you on the live stream, and we were just talking. Usually I ask resource partners to share some questions, so I direct the conversation in a way that is that I don't look like a fool, and then that you guys also share the things that are good. And the questions that Jeremy has shared with me are so good. This is stuff that we hear at the Crown Council office all day long, whether it's the Young Dentist program, like young dentists hoping to transition into a practice, or old Crown Council doctors transitioning out of a practice. So really looking forward to having you on. Thank you for being on.
Oh, yeah.
Jeremy, before we begin, for those that haven't met you at the annual event or who have connected with your company, will you give us a 2-minute, 1-minute elevator speech about what you do and the solution that you provide to dental practices?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an honor to be joining you on this live stream. And our firm, Watson Brown, been around for a little over 30 years and been a long time resource partner with the Crown Council. So in essence, what we do is we help doctors with transitions, helping them buy and sell dental practices. In addition to being a business broker, I'm also an attorney. And so we provide turnkey transition solutions to our clients so they're prepared and things go well.
And I love this idea, because usually this only happens once or twice in a dental professional's life. But for you guys, it's like it's happening all day, every day. And the questions and the things that you see, it's for me, a no-brainer when it comes to a Crown Council doctor who is sitting there saying, man, should I sell my practice? Should I buy a practice? Should I hire an associate? Should I go to a DSO? Should we join a group practice? And you're sitting there saying, well, I've seen this 1,000 times. And what an incredible solution and resource to Crown Council members. So thank you. Grateful for you. Thank you. I also have to, where credit is due, I have to thank you for your awesome dad. I loved your father. He was an incredible leader and example to me. We shared a lot of annual event golf tournaments together. So what a great guy. We miss him. So.
Oh, thanks.
Hey, so the first question I wanted to talk about that you shared, which I think is so good, is when I work with these Crown Council young dentists, they're always wondering how to transition into a practice. Should I buy in? Should I become an associate? Should I be hired as a DSO? And so when you are looking at the future sale of a practice, is hiring an associate a good idea to prepare any practice for that? Can you talk about that, hiring an associate?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll probably first start off by answering that question by saying, you know, in the hundreds, if not thousands of transitions that we've been a part of, the large majority of transitions are what we call a walkaway sale, where the selling doctor sells the practice and then there's a short transition period and then they leave. And so there's a lot of different ways you can sell and transition a dental practice. But a lot of times we get this idea of, hey, should I bring an associate on? Maybe that's a good idea
Right.
for many different reasons. Maybe it allows me to cut back, but not allow the production to drop. So there's some coverage. Maybe that's a good way to introduce the patients and the staff prior to a sale. So there's a smoother transition. And I think the concept of bringing an associate in first has a lot of merit, but there's also a lot of pitfalls. And that's why I wanted to talk about that. So I think from the associate future buyer's perspective, it allows them to, in essence, kind of test drive the practice to say, hey, is this going to be a good fit for me? And am I going to like it? Do the patients gravitate to me? And are they going to accept me as a provider in the practice? You know, typically when we have these associate type transitions, the first thing we're kind of looking at is how committed is the selling doctor to actually selling the practice? Is this something where they're just saying, hey, I want to bring an associate on, and if it works out, great. If not, so I think there has to be a mutual commitment level between both the associate buyer and the practice owner, future seller, to saying, do we want to actually have a transition? Usually within a 5-year period. If you go too much further out in 5 years, that just seems forever, and so many things can happen in 5 years. So a lot of times we'll do these transitions where an associate comes in and maybe there's like a honeymoon period of 6 months or 12 months to make sure mutually both the practice owner and the associate like each other and they feel like it's a good fit. But at the same time, we've not only drawn up an employment agreement, but there's also terms of what the sale could look like, and maybe even going a step further to solidify that commitment of having a practice agreement in place that actually shows the sales contract and the terms are even signed, and we're just deferring that closing date. So I think it first is probably a good conversation of how committed do the parties want to get before transitioning starts.
I love that. Oh, go ahead. I don't want to cut you off. More?
No, and so I think unless you're already a 2-doctor practice where there's already an associate working for you, and maybe that associate's leaving and you're replacing the associate, I think the practice owner needs to start by just saying, is bringing an associate into the practice a good idea to begin with? And I think it's not just as simple as, hey, I'm going to bring another doctor in and we're going to double the collections and life is good. So there's an assessment that needs to happen. First, facility. I would recommend 3 operatories per doctor. So if you've got 4 operatories, how are you going to fit 2 doctors in there plus your hygiene department? That might be really difficult to do, especially if both doctors are going to be working close to a full-time schedule. Schedule. If you're only booked out on the clinical side, not the hygiene side, but the clinical side, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, is that enough really to keep 2 doctors busy? Most associates I know are not looking for a gig where they come in and then you're kind of sitting around half the day going, hey, I'm not seeing a lot of patients. So if the schedule isn't booked out far enough for 2 doctors, then is the selling doctor or the practice owner willing to give up some of their schedule and share that production? Right. Staff. I think from a staff perspective, is there enough assistance and hygiene department to support an additional doctor? And then finally, I think in the assessment is from a management perspective, is everything else going well? You know, collections, billing, scheduling, just making sure that the staff cohesiveness is good. If your practice is struggling in one of those areas, bringing on an associate is not going to make that better. In fact, it might make it worse. So I think if we can go through that assessment process and go, yes, we've got a good schedule in place, we've got enough facility to handle 2 doctors, we've got the staff to support that, and the management side of things is going well, then I think you open up the conversation of, okay, now let's go move to the next step. Now, there's a little bit of buzz, and I'm not sure if you've heard this in the Crown Counsel office, that non-competes are going away, or at least being challenged. And so right now that's in court right now. I'm not sure what will happen in the future, but I even had a doctor recently ask me, well, if there's no non-competes, maybe I don't need a written employment agreement. And as an attorney, my ears just perk up and go, no. We always want to have everything in writing so that, and I'm not sure how you are, a conversation that was had a month ago, are you going to remember all the details? And so we want to make sure there's a written employment agreement for that associate if you choose to bring an associate on. And even if a non-compete is not available, a non-solicitation. So you're not letting staff and patients walk out the door with that associate if they leave. Deciding who owns the chart records. And I mean, I could go through a list of several things we want to see in an employment agreement, but that is a very important part of that process too. If you're going to bring an associate on, we want to have an employment agreement at the minimum in place to make sure that the practice owner and the associate are protected and things are well spelled out.
Nice. And just to clarify, Jeremy, these are things you do on a daily basis, correct?
That's right.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Hey, so I've got a close friend here in Salt Lake City. He's 66. He's looking to retire, and he said this in a way that kind of made me laugh. He's been looking to sell to another dentist, and he cannot find anyone to essentially buy his practice. So he said, I think I'm going to just sell it to a DSO. And I think he felt that was maybe like the second best option behind, just for his practice. Like he would love to pass this off to a friend or to an up and coming dentist, but he said, kind of in a derogatory way, well, I can't find that person, so I'm just going to sell it off to a DSO. Can you talk about that for a minute, from a money perspective and from what you see from your perspective, those two options when it comes to a practice?
Yeah. So first off, I'll say that I am not anti or pro DSO. My job when I represent a practice owner is say what is in their best interest and what makes sense in that specific situation. So a lot of times, and I hear that too, it's almost like they're selling their soul. I don't want to do that. DSOs, there's something bad or connotation of, and so I think there are a lot of myths and misconceptions about selling to DSOs. And one of those is, if I sell to a DSO, I'm going to make more money. Well, that really depends. Maybe, but maybe not. And I think the first thing we start off at, and there's several components, I'm going to go through them briefly. One of them is the purchase price gets so much attention on a practice sale, as it should. That's, what you're selling the practice for. But in a DSO sale, typically you're going to see a doctor having to work back 2 to 5 years after the sale. So a lot of our clients immediately go, wait a second. Right. I have to commit 2 to 5 more years. I've already mentally and emotionally said, I think I'm ready to sell. And now I have to extend that. Maybe they can't because of personal or reasons, health reasons, family reasons. But let's say that's not an issue. Let's say they're okay saying, hey, I'd actually like to work another 2 to 5 years. So let's do a little bit of math. And I'm not an accountant. I'm not a math expert, but I can do some simple math. And if typically what you see in a DSO transaction is they will pay that selling doctor that has 30 to 40 years experience the same as someone that's been out 2 to 5 years. Wow. It's not like, oh, well, you paid yourself X, we're gonna pay that much too. So often that practice owner is getting paid an associate salary and taking a pay cut during that 2 to 5 year period. So we're looking at the purchase price, but we're also saying, okay, what does that pay cut mean in that period of time? Had I waited 2 more years and just kept working that time frame and then sell to a private doctor, am I actually going to make more? So what we see is for practice owners that are collecting 1.5 million in annual collections or less annually, typically a DSO and a private practice sale, the purchase price is very similar. It's very comparable.
Okay.
It's not until we see the practices getting $2+ million in annual collections that we see purchase prices going up significantly, going, hey, now that's bending my ear. I think I need to look at that just from a financial perspective. A couple other things I would put in there, and some of this might not be new to the Crown Council members, but just to put it out there so there's no misunderstanding. So there's two typical things we see in DSO sales. One I already referenced is a work back provision of 2 to 5 years. The other is a holdback provision on the purchase price. So a lot of times the DSO will pay anywhere from 70 to 80% of the purchase price, and then the other 20 to 30% is being held back to ensure that the production in the practice doesn't drop off, and to ensure that the practice owner is fulfilling that work back commitment. So they actually have a little bit of tug in making sure that the practice owner just doesn't leave the next day because they don't like, the DSO or whatever. So I would say it's really important, first off, to not just get focused on the purchase price, the EBITDA, the multiplier, all of these things that are important, but it's beyond that. What am I giving up working in that 2 to 5 year period from a compensation standpoint, as well as tax savings as a practice owner? Are there some pre-tax dollars that I was able to use and plan, and now that I'm giving that up as an associate employee that I don't have access to anymore? So I think it's just a case by case situation. A lot of that's driven by size of the practice. Sometimes it's also location or specialty. And so making sure that just because you heard someone out in the dental community got a sweetheart deal, that may or may not happen. Last thing I'll point out, and this is kind of scary. A lot of offers for DSOs will actually include stock options or some equity in the DSO. And why that might be a fun idea, thinking, hey, they're going to roll up and they're going to sell for 10 times or more down the road. We don't see those roll-up events happen very often. Like very, very rarely do they happen. And so I would not advise any of my clients to take part of the purchase price as part of a stock or equity option. If they want to give you that, great. But I wouldn't have that be part of the purchase price. I've seen a lot of people kind of get burned on that or waiting out, and it just never happens.
Yeah. Huh. Great advice. Things that I would have thought about when it comes to just connecting all these dots. Another question, Jeremy, that you have here that I think is super interesting. And this goes to, when the Crown Council was first created back in 1997, a lot of those docs are now those original doctors are kind of transitioning out there, doing the things that you are talking about. And one of the questions that we often hear is, when it comes to, I'm going to sell my practice, is it better for me to just sell it and walk away? Should I stay in the practice? How long should I stay in the practice? Can you talk about that when the seller of a practice is closing and they're getting ready to retire or move away? How long should they work together or be together? Is that case by case, or is that something that you can comment on the, solutions for docs?
Yeah. So,
okay.
We kind of talked about DSOs and what the expectation would be, more than likely about 2 to 5 years. Let's talk about in private sales, what the expectation should be.
Okay.
So if we're looking at a one doctor practice, then one of the considerations is, even if the seller and the buyer want to work together long term, a lot of these determinations on the transition also revolve around the cash flow of the practice. Can the buyer afford to have the seller stick around? Because unless there's going to be some ways to grow the practice, maybe adding additional procedures, maybe there's some additional marketing initiatives that are bringing new patients in. I think that's a consideration, because maybe the buyer can afford to keep the seller on for a certain period of time, but will that work long run? Because in addition to the overhead that the practice has, now the buyer has a bank payment that they're having to repay. And so they have all these obligations that they're needing to make sure that they're going to be able to hit. And so sometimes I'll have a practice, let's just say 500,000 annual collections. So it's a smaller practice and one doctor practice, and the buyer's like, yeah, I'd like to have the seller work for me for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, well, how are you going to afford that? And so it's not like we're closing the door on that, but there has to be some financial understanding of how that's going to work out for the buyer. As far as there's kind of two parts of a transition post-closing. There's the support that a seller gives to a buyer, making patient introductions, answering questions that the buyer has about the administrative side of things. And typically that support, that transition support, is not paid because the doctor's not providing clinical treatment in that role. And then there's the other side of it where the seller is there actually producing dentistry, and they're providing clinical services to patients. And so that post-closing work, we typically see fall under an employment agreement or an associate agreement, especially if it's going to be for more than a couple months, where we have in place what the terms and the compensation are of the seller working for the buyer. I would say, Stuart, just based on my experience, most transitions of the seller working back for the buyer are 1 year or less, and of those, 90% of them are probably less than 2 months, and so it's a very quick transition. If we're looking at a bigger practice, let's say the practice is doing north of $1 million in annual collections, and especially if there's some specialty work, maybe there's procedures that the seller's doing that the buyer isn't ready to do yet, whether that's ortho or oral surgery or whatever, it might be a good idea to keep the seller on, even if it's just a part-time capacity. And so there might be a transition period where the seller is going to be involved for a couple weeks, making introductions, especially for the patients that are immediately coming into the practice after closing. But after that, might say, hey, maybe I can afford to keep the seller on, and maybe that would be a good idea to not lose that production, or to have a part-time schedule so that the patients that go, hey, I'm not sure I'm ready to give the new doctor a shot yet as my provider. So if the seller's there, maybe I'll see the seller, and we keep the seller in a limited capacity on a part-time basis. And what that will do too is that'll kind of weed out a little bit the idea of, oh, I'm just gonna, if Dr. Jones, the seller, is still there, I'm just gonna see Dr. Jones. Well, we can do that, but he's booked out 6 weeks. Or we could have new doctor come in, you could see him next week. What would you like to do, patient? And so I think that transition is just, case by case. What can the practice handle? What can the buyer afford? What's the seller willing to do? How much does the buyer really need the seller? We've heard situations where, and this happens quite frequently, Stuart, where the buyer will say, I think I need the seller for like 6 months. And after a month go, I'm good.
Right.
I think I got this.
Right.
And they're confident enough in their clinical abilities. They're good in talking with people and explaining the treatment and winning their trust. Because in those situations, in a one doctor practice, if the seller's there, is the buyer having to say, okay, well, if Dr. Jones is still here, maybe I'll just go to Dr. Jones.
Right.
And the buyer's like, well, I don't want the patient just going out the door to or seeing the other doctor. So it's kind of a balancing act. And I think that's why it's just important to really weigh all of those considerations to make sure it's the best fit for that specific transition.
Interesting. And Jeremy, when that kind of thing is happening, are you part of that conversation? Like, are those docs calling you and being like, hey, I know we signed an agreement for 6 months. Will you come and help negotiate? I mean, is that something that happens?
Yeah, it does. And I would say that we're trying to fill that out in the weeks and days leading up to the sale of what do we think is going to work. And we do our best. There's no guarantees of what's going to happen after the closing and how things are actually going to pan out. But we try to do our best to anticipate what's going to happen. And if we feel like there's not a strong commitment or understanding of how it might roll out, we use language such as up to 6 months rather than 6 months.
Right.
Or maybe it words on a schedule that's mutually agreeable so that there's some openness to that conversation. So yeah, we can definitely help prepare for that as best as possible. But if something happens after the closing, there's some conversations of what's going to work best and how do we maybe modify it, change it, or terminate the agreement a little early if possible.
Nice. Very good. Hey, well, one last question before we let you go, and hopefully we can have you back, because I feel like there's a lot of great topics and interesting insights that docs just don't think about when it comes to, their practice and how they think. But one item that is probably on everybody's mind is, do you have a top 3, a top 5, I don't know what you would want to call it, of most important things any practice owner should be doing to prepare for the future sale? Like stuff that everybody can be thinking about now, and adding to a little list of things that this is going to put me in a good spot when it comes time to sell the practice.
Yeah. So I would say that the most important thing that I'll lead off with is starting early. And I'm not a psychologist, but I feel like there's a little bit of psychology of what I'm doing and working with doctors. And I don't know. And I think we all do this, Stuart. We don't want to be sold. And maybe doctors feel reluctant to call a broker or, a company like ours, thinking, hey, if I call Jeremy and talk to him early, he's going to sell me early.
Right.
And, a lot of our clients, we work with them 1 year, 2 years, 5 years out before they're even ready to list their practice for sale. And you mentioned this early on, these are kind of career defining moments in a doctor's profession. Like, you only sell your practice once. When is the right time to sell it? And I think starting early will help to answer that question, actually. And so Terry Watson, who was a general dentist for many years, and Terry retired, and his name is the founder of our firm. He would explain to doctors very well. There's 2 things you need to consider as far as the timing of the sale. And one is there something else you'd rather be doing? That might be family. It might be charitable work. It might be mentoring young doctors. So there's so many things out there that maybe there's something else you'd rather be doing at that point. And 2, are you financially in a position to make that change? So I think those are the 2 questions. I think another thing too is we want to make sure that doctors, when they sell their practice, the practice sale is not their retirement nest egg. It's the icing on the cake. And so by starting early, one of the things that we do and other brokerage firms will do out there is do a valuation on the practice or an appraisal. Nice. And I think getting the valuation done early also helps to do 2 things. One, from a financial and planning perspective, know where the numbers are going to be at, where you can anticipate selling your practice. And 2, when we do a valuation, we're going to look at possible deal breakers to selling the practice. And what I mean by that, I'll just give you a couple examples. Okay. Issues in the lease. Well, I've never seen a practice. It's very rare that we see a practices sell without a place to practice dentistry.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that would be pretty cool. Maybe there's a niche there of setting up a lawn chair in someone's front yard and making a cool vibe there.
There's not.
But we do mergers and we do merger sales, but typically practices are selling and the buyer's taking over a lease or purchasing the real estate from the seller. And that real estate component is really important. So if there's a lease in place, we need to understand that. Make sure there's no gotchas or pitfalls there in the lease. We also don't want the doctor to be on a month and then potentially get kicked out from the landlord. We've actually seen that happen. And it's a heartbreaker going, what am I supposed to do? I'm like, well, we either sell ASAP find a merger candidate, or you're closing the doors
Mhm.
and you've lost all of the value of your practice. So getting the valuation done, helping you find the pitfalls, I think is an important thing. And so all of that really wraps into that main point I was saying of starting early. I recommend starting 1 to 5 years out from when you want to sell. I think the more specialized your practice is, or the more rural your practice is, could push you more towards starting earlier rather than later. I don't want to, I never want to see a doctor call me up, and this happens a couple times a year. Jeremy, I'm having some health issues. I got to sell the practice ASAP. If we've started early, Stuart, we can actually help them kick the plan in place immediately and avoid losing, leaving money on the table from the purchase price, or even worse, maybe shutting the doors because there's no one practicing in the practice, the staff leave and the patients leave type of scenario. So that would probably be my big thing is don't feel uncomfortable starting early and have those conversations. We typically don't open up a practice and think in 30 years or in 40 years, I'm going to sell and wrap that up as far as putting a bow on my career. So wherever you're at, think about the end in mind. What do I want that transition to look like? What is that time frame for me? And starting, you kind of working your way back. If I want to work until I'm 68, well, maybe at 62, 63, I'm having a conversation with someone to understand my transition options, understand the valuation of my practice, and having that in place. Because I think that preparation will do a couple of things. Tax planning, make it better, make this transition a little smoother, and could potentially make the practice sell for a higher value by catching a couple of things early on and addressing those.
Smart. Awesome. Okay. Jeremy, this is for everybody now as we kind of conclude, you should connect with Jeremy, connect with his company. And he offered before, even if that's just from a questions perspective or connecting with him in a way where he's offering some solutions. Obviously, that is what all resource partners are all about here in the Crown Council. I will include a link to your resource partner page with this video, but is that the best way to connect, Jeremy? Do you want emails? Do you want phone calls? What's best?
I'll take it all. Yeah, email is probably the best way to communicate with me, Jeremy at watsonbrownsales.com. And yeah, if there's a question that pops up or you just want to be a sounding board, happy to jump on and have a quick call and give you some direction on how to proceed.
We're so grateful you're part of this group and thankful you're with us every year at the annual event. And it's just great being a partner with you. So thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. All right. I know that was a little longer than normal resource partner interviews, but so much good stuff from Jeremy that I hope we can rewatch and cut up into clips to share with the rest of the group. So
he is not a vendor. He is not a vendor. He is a partner.
Well, I told him after we finished too, I said, he was like, what I share is not very glamorous. And I said, there are very few people in the world that have the experience with the scenarios that he has been in that could rival the information that he has in his brain. It's pretty incredible to know that he is, a practice doesn't come along often that sells, but he sees multiple a day. So what
I can't tell you, Stu, how many times I get the phone call from our Crown Council members that say, okay, I'm ready to sell.
Right.
What do I do? And they've already made up their mind that it's time. And 2 or 3 years worth of planning for that and knowing the guy that's going to help you get it done. When he said start early, that was probably the most important thing he said. At least as I see others who are frustrated that now that they're ready, it takes time and that it would have been better to make some decisions earlier on. Anyway.
Awesome.
He's a good guy.
I know we're over a little bit, so we'll wrap up. And we were going to do a webinar today, but I made that announcement last week. We pushed that to August 15th. So some information is coming out about that, but it is the webinar's title is going to be Your Worst to Best Month Ever. So that'll be all about making September your best month. So that's it. That's it for today. Thanks for all those that joined us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Stu.
Thanks.